A cowboy was left to die under the desert sun until one woman chose to stay. The town of Red Hollow was small, quiet, and slow. Dust moved gently through its streets, and most people knew each other by name. But there was one man people spoke about in low voices, as if he lived just outside their world. His name was Cole Mercer. Cole was a cowboy, strong and steady, but always alone. He worked hard, spoke little, and never stayed in one place longer than needed. People tried to be friendly with him at first, but over time, they stopped trying. Cole did not seem rude, just distant, like a man who had locked his heart and thrown away the key. Long ago, Cole had made a promise to himself. He would never fall in love again. No one in Red Hollow knew the full story. Some said he had lost someone. Others believed he had simply chosen a life of solitude. But whatever the reason was, Cole kept that promise every single day. His mornings started before sunrise. He would saddle his horse, ride out into the open land, and spend hours working alone. The wide desert suited him. It asked no questions and gave no answers. In the evenings, he returned quietly. Sometimes he stopped by the small general store, bought what he needed, and left without much conversation. Other times, he sat alone outside the saloon, watching the sky change colors as the sun went down. He was used to this life, and he believed he always would be. One afternoon, Cole was asked to travel to the next town to deliver a small package. It was a simple job, nothing unusual. Instead of riding the whole way, he decided to take the stagecoach. It would save time, and he did not mind the quiet ride. The stagecoach was old but steady. A few passengers were already seated inside when Cole stepped in. He nodded slightly, took a seat near the window, and rested his hat low over his eyes. The ride began. For a while, everything was just as Cole expected, quiet, slow, and uneventful. The wheels rolled over the dry road, and the sound of horses filled the air. No one spoke much. Then, at the next stop, something changed. The coach door opened, and a young woman stepped inside. She looked tired, as if she had been traveling for a long time. Dust covered the edges of her dress, and her hair was slightly out of place. But even then, there was something calm and gentle about her. Her eyes moved around the coach, searching for a place to sit. The only empty seat was beside Cole. She hesitated for a moment, then slowly walked over and sat down next to him. Cole noticed her, of course. He always noticed his surroundings, but he did not say anything. He simply shifted slightly to give her space and looked back out the window. The stagecoach started moving again. Minutes passed, then more minutes. The road stretched on, quiet and endless. The woman sat still at first, holding her small bag close to her. She seemed polite, careful not to disturb anyone. But it was clear she was exhausted. Her eyes blinked slowly, and her head nodded once, then twice. Cole kept his gaze forward, but he could sense it. She was struggling to stay awake. And then, without warning, it happened. Her head gently fell against his shoulder. For a moment, time felt like it stopped. Cole froze. His first instinct was to move away. That was what he always did. Create distance, avoid closeness, keep everything simple. But he didn't move. He sat there, still as stone, unsure of what to do. The woman was fast asleep. Her breathing was soft and steady. There was no tension in her face, no worry, just rest. It was as if, in that moment, she trusted the world enough to let her guard down. And somehow, she had chosen his shoulder. Cole's jaw tightened slightly. This was not something he was used to. No one leaned on him. No one came this close. Yet he didn't push her away. Instead, he stared ahead, his thoughts shifting in a way he did not understand. The warmth of her presence felt strange, but not unpleasant. Other passengers noticed. A quiet smile appeared on one older man's face. A woman across from them glanced over, then looked away politely. But Cole paid no attention to them. His focus remained on the feeling he could not explain. He had spent years keeping people at a distance, years making sure no one got close enough to matter. And now, a stranger, someone he did not even know, had crossed that distance without trying, just by falling asleep. The stagecoach continued its slow journey through the desert. The sun moved across the sky, casting long shadows inside the coach. Still, Cole did not move. He could have woken her. He could have shifted away. He could have reminded himself of his promise. But he didn't. For the first time in a long while, Cole Mercer simply sat still and allowed the moment to stay. And deep inside, though he would never admit it, something had already begun to change. Part 2. The Unexpected Stillness. The stagecoach continued moving across the long desert road. The sound of the wheels and the steady steps of the horses filled the silence. Inside, everything remained calm. The young woman was still asleep. Her head rested gently on Cole's shoulder, and her breathing was slow and peaceful. She did not move, as if she had finally found a moment of rest after a long journey. Cole sat still, his back straight, his eyes looking ahead. But his mind was no longer quiet. He was not used to this. For years, Cole had kept his distance from everyone. He avoided close moments, avoided conversations that lasted too long, and never allowed anyone to get comfortable around him. It made life easier, simple. But this moment was different. He could feel the light weight of her head on his shoulder. It was not heavy, not uncomfortable. In fact, it felt natural. That thought surprised him the most. Natural? Cole slightly tightened his jaw. He did not like how that word sounded in his mind. He reminded himself of his promise. No attachments, no closeness, no love. Still, he did not move. The coach hit a small bump on the road. The movement made the woman shift slightly, but she did not wake up. Instead, she leaned a little closer, as if her body trusted that she was safe. Cole's hand rested near his side. For a brief second, he thought about moving it, maybe creating some space between them. But again, he didn't. Across from them, an older woman watched quietly. She gave a soft smile, then looked out the window, respecting the moment. A man beside her adjusted his hat and said nothing. There was something peaceful about the scene. No one wanted to disturb it. Time passed slowly. The sun moved lower in the sky, and golden light filled the inside of the coach. Dust floated in the air, glowing softly. Cole's thoughts drifted to places he had not visited in a long time. Memories. Not clear ones, just feelings. Warm laughter. A voice he could not fully remember. A time when he was not always alone. He blinked and looked forward again, pushing those thoughts away. He did not like going back there. It only made things harder. But still, something felt different. After what felt like a long time, the stagecoach began to slow down. The driver called out that they would be stopping soon. The movement caused the woman to stir. She blinked slowly, lifting her head without realizing where she had been resting. Then, suddenly, she froze. Her eyes widened slightly. I'm so sorry, she said quickly, sitting up straight. Her face turned a little red with embarrassment. I didn't mean to fall asleep like that. Cole looked at her for a brief moment. She looked nervous, as if she expected him to be upset. It's all right, he said simply. His voice was calm, no anger, no discomfort. That seemed to surprise her. She gave a small, relieved smile. Thank you. I must have been more tired than I thought. Cole nodded slightly, but said nothing more. For a few seconds, silence returned between them. But this silence felt different from before. It was not cold or distant. It was easier. The stagecoach stopped, and a few passengers stepped out to stretch. Some stayed inside. The woman adjusted her bag and took a small breath, as if deciding whether to speak again. "My name is Eliza," she said softly. Cole hesitated for a moment. He usually avoided introductions. Names often led to conversations, and conversations led to connections. But something about this moment made it harder to ignore. "Cole," he replied. Eliza nodded. "Nice to meet you, Cole." There was a gentle kindness in her voice. Not forced, not too friendly, just simple and honest. They sat quietly again as the coach started moving once more. After a few minutes, Eliza spoke again, a little more comfortable now. "Are you from Red Hollow?" she asked. Cole gave a small nod. "Yeah." "I'm heading there," she said. "Starting fresh, I guess." Cole glanced at her briefly. "Fresh start?" She smiled faintly. "Sometimes people need one." Cole understood that more than he wanted to admit. "Yeah," he said quietly. "Sometimes they do." The conversation was simple. No deep questions, no pressure, but it continued. They spoke about small things, the road, the weather, the town ahead. Eliza did most of the talking, but not in an overwhelming way. Cole answered when needed, and slowly, he found himself speaking a little more than usual. It felt strange, but not bad. As the sun began to set, the sky turned shades of orange and pink. The long journey was coming to an end. Cole leaned back slightly, his eyes on the horizon. He could still feel the memory of her head on his shoulder, and for some reason, it stayed with him. He had taken this ride expecting nothing, just another quiet journey. But now, as the stagecoach rolled toward Red Hollow, Cole knew something had changed. Not something big, not something he could explain, just a small shift, a crack in the walls he had built so carefully over the years. And though he tried to ignore it, he could not. Part 3. The walls begin to crack. When the stagecoach finally reached Red Hollow, the sky had already turned dark. Lanterns were glowing softly along the street, and the town looked calm, just as it always did. Cole stepped down first. He adjusted his hat, ready to return to his usual routine, quiet, simple, and alone. But before he could walk away, he noticed Eliza struggling with her bag. It was not very big, but she looked tired again, as if the long journey had taken all her strength. For a moment, Cole paused. He could leave. That would be easier. That was what he always did. But instead, he stepped forward. "I'll help," he said. Eliza looked surprised, then smiled softly. "Thank you." Cole picked up her bag without another word. Together, they walked slowly into town. The night air was cool, and everything felt still. "Do you have a place to stay?" Cole asked. "Not yet," Eliza replied. "I was hoping to find a room at the boarding house." Cole nodded. "There's one near the main street. It's quiet." They walked side by side, not too close, not too far. The silence between them felt calm, not awkward. When they reached the boarding house, Cole placed her bag down near the door. "This is it," he said. Eliza looked at him with a grateful expression. "Thank you, Cole, for the help, and earlier too." Cole gave a small nod. "You're welcome." For a second, neither of them moved. Then Eliza spoke again, gently. "Maybe I'll see you around?" Cole hesitated. He wasn't used to that kind of question. People didn't usually expect to see him again. But before he could think too much, he answered, "Yeah, maybe." Eliza smiled and stepped inside. Cole stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked away. That should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. The next morning, Cole woke up before sunrise, just like always. He followed his routine, saddled his horse, rode out into the open land, and worked through the quiet hours. Everything felt the same, but at the same time, It didn't. His mind wandered. He found himself thinking about the stagecoach, about the quiet conversation, about the moment she had fallen asleep without fear. Cole shook his head slightly, trying to focus on his work. This doesn't matter, he told himself. But the thought didn't fully go away. Later that day, Cole stopped by the general store. It was something he did often, always quick and simple, but today, as he stepped inside, he saw someone familiar. Eliza. She stood near the counter, looking at a few small items, clearly unsure about what to buy. Cole stopped at the door for a second. He could leave. She hadn't seen him yet. That would be easier. But before he could turn away, Eliza looked up, and their eyes met. Her face brightened with a small smile. "Cole," she said. "Hi." He nodded. "Hi." He walked inside, slower than usual. "Settling in?" he asked. "I'm trying," she said with a light laugh. "Everything is new. I'm still figuring things out." Cole glanced at the items in her hand. "You'll get used to it." "I hope so," she replied. There was a short pause, but it didn't feel uncomfortable. Then Eliza asked, "Do you live here in town?" "Just outside," Cole said. "Quiet place." "That sounds nice," she said. "I think I'd like quiet." Cole almost smiled at that. Almost. Days passed. Cole expected their meeting at the store to be just a small moment, something that would fade away. But instead, he kept seeing her, at the edge of town, near the well, walking slowly through the streets, learning her way around. Each time their conversations grew a little longer. Still simple, still calm, but longer. Eliza never asked too many questions. She didn't push Cole to talk about things he clearly avoided. She simply spoke with him like it was normal, and that made it easier for him to stay. One afternoon, Cole saw her struggling with a loose fence behind the boarding house. The wood had shifted, and she was trying to fix it on her own. Cole watched from a distance for a moment. Then, without thinking too much, he walked over. "Let me," he said. Eliza stepped back. "You don't have to." "It's fine," Cole replied. He fixed the fence quickly, his hands steady and skilled. "Thank you," Eliza said, smiling. Cole nodded, wiping his hands. "No problem." But as he turned to leave, she said softly, "You don't talk much, but you help a lot." Cole paused. He didn't know how to respond to that, so he just gave a small nod and walked away. That evening, Cole sat outside his small home looking up at the sky. The stars were clear, bright, and endless. This was where he usually found peace, but tonight his thoughts were not as quiet. He thought about Eliza, about her calm voice, her simple kindness, the way she didn't try to change him. Cole leaned back slightly, taking a slow breath. For years he had built strong walls around himself, walls that kept everything safe, walls that kept everything distant. But now, there were small cracks. Nothing big, nothing obvious, just enough to let something new slip through. And for the first time in a long while, Cole didn't know if he wanted to fix those cracks or let them grow. Part 4. A Promise Rewritten. The days in Red Hollow moved slowly, just like always. The wind carried dust through the streets, and the sun rose and set without much change. But for Cole Mercer, things were no longer the same. He still woke up early. He still worked long hours. He still kept his quiet ways. Yet something inside him had shifted, and he could feel it more with each passing day. One morning, Cole found himself riding toward town earlier than usual. He told himself he needed supplies. That was the reason. But deep down, he knew the truth. He was hoping to see Eliza. When he reached the general store, he stepped inside, his eyes moving quickly around the room. She wasn't there. For a brief moment, something like disappointment touched his chest. He didn't like that feeling. He picked up what he needed and stepped outside again. The town looked the same as always, but now it felt like something was missing. Cole stood there for a second, then shook his head. "This is nothing," he told himself quietly, but even he didn't fully believe it anymore. Later that day, as the sun began to lower, Cole decided to take a ride beyond the hills. It was a place he often went when he needed space to think. The land stretched wide and open, with soft wind moving through the dry grass. As he rode up a small hill, he noticed someone in the distance, a familiar figure. It was Eliza. She stood beside a wooden fence, looking out at the open land, her hair moving gently in the wind. Cole slowed his horse, then stopped a short distance away. For a moment, he simply watched. Then he spoke. "Didn't expect to see you out here." Eliza turned, slightly surprised. Then she smiled. "I could say the same," she replied. Cole stepped down from his horse. "What brings you here?" he asked. Eliza looked back at the view. "I wanted to see something different. The town is nice, but this feels bigger, like I can breathe more out here." Cole nodded slowly. "Yeah, it does." They stood side by side, looking at the horizon. The sky was painted in soft orange and gold as the sun began to set. For a while, neither of them spoke, but the silence felt comfortable. After a few minutes, Eliza spoke gently. "You come here often?" "Sometimes," Cole answered, "when I need quiet." Eliza gave a small smile. "You like quiet." Cole almost smiled again. "Guess I do." She looked at him for a moment, then said softly, "You don't have to be quiet all the time, you know." Cole didn't respond right away. Her words were simple, but they stayed with him. "I made a promise," he finally said. Eliza didn't interrupt. She just listened. "A long time ago," Cole continued, "I told myself I wouldn't let anyone get close again. Thought it would make things easier." Eliza nodded slightly. "Did it?" Cole looked out at the horizon. "For a while," he said, "but not anymore." The truth of those words surprised him. He had never said it out loud before. The wind moved softly around them. The sun dropped lower, and the sky grew deeper in color. Eliza spoke again, her voice calm and kind. "Sometimes we make promises to protect ourselves," she said. "But that doesn't mean we have to keep them forever." Cole looked at her. There was no pressure in her eyes, no expectation, just understanding. And that made it easier for him to breathe. "I don't know how to change that," Cole admitted. "You don't have to change everything at once," Eliza replied. "Just don't run away from what feels right." Cole thought about that. For years, running away had been the only thing he knew. But now, he wasn't so sure anymore. As the sun slowly disappeared behind the hills, a quiet feeling settled in the air. Something new, something calm. Cole took a slow breath, then said, "That day on the stagecoach, when you fell asleep." Eliza smiled slightly. "I remember. I was very embarrassed." Cole shook his head lightly. "You didn't look embarrassed. You looked peaceful." Eliza looked at him, a little surprised. "I guess I felt safe," she said softly. Those words stayed with him. Safe. No one had ever used that word around him before. Cole looked down for a moment, then back at her. "I didn't move," he said, "even though I could have." Eliza smiled gently. "I'm glad you didn't." The sky grew darker, and the first stars began to appear. Cole stood there, feeling something he had not allowed himself to feel in a very long time. Not fear, not distance, something quieter, something warmer. He looked at Eliza again, and this time he didn't look away quickly. "I don't know what this is," he said honestly. Eliza's voice was soft. "You don't have to name it." Cole nodded slowly. For once, he didn't feel the need to understand everything. He just needed to stay. They walked back together as the night settled over Red Hollow. Not too close, not too far, but no longer distant. And as they reached the edge of town, Cole realized something simple. something clear. The promise he had made long ago no longer held the same power. Because somewhere between a quiet stagecoach ride, a simple conversation, and a shared sunset, that promise had already begun to fade. And in its place, something new had quietly grown. Not rushed, not forced, just real. And for the first time in years, Cole Mercer did not turn away from it. He walked forward and let it stay.